So in fact, let's go across to Abhishek Gupta, who's joining us, associate partner with MZM Legal. And this perhaps is a good thing, Abhishek, because we've been going through all three of these bills very closely. Let's start with the one which seems to be very interesting for all of here when it comes to the Sedition Act, because there is a bit of a confusion, because the new law which seems to be replacing the Sedition Act, and correct me if I'm wrong there, but the new one does not use the word sedition. It actually talks about acts of sedition. Is this a wider law that we see than what was the existing sedition law? What's your understanding?
Good afternoon, Meghana. Thank you for having me. So firstly, yes, given the fact that the entire intent of these legislations are to move away from colonial era justice, the laws on sedition must have been the first target, because as has been expressed in the parliament also, at that point of time, the intent of the laws was to primarily enforce foreign rule, the British rule. And therefore, that was the purport of sedition laws. Here, we are a free nation, and we've been doing quite well for ourselves over the last so many years, almost a century now. So the sedition laws here are more targeted towards maintaining internal peace and order rather than governing over a foreign nation. Therefore, conceptually, the term sedition will see that change.
So that's very significant. So the word sedition may not be there, but it's actually a stronger, more sterner law, however. But one of the others are the crimes against women, and that's very important as well, because we've seen many new laws being brought in, but at the end of it, very little seems to be changing on the ground. Can you tell us a bit about that? How there are going to be now sterner action and punishment which is going to be given out for crimes against women?
Certainly. So, first and foremost, this, for the first time, penal code in India has a whole chapter dedicated to women and children. That by itself is laudable, because it identifies that there are offenses, severe penal offenses, which are aimed only at women and children, and they should be given preferential treatment to that extent. Secondly, as of now, surprisingly, a lot of laws which deal with offenses against women and children are not stringent enough to provide enough social deterrence. So here what we see in this bill, and of course it is subject to a lot of scrutiny right now, starting with the standing committee, the penalties that appear to have been imposed or are liable to be imposed are much sterner, which should offer much stronger reasons to refrain from committing any such acts. Having said that, we will have to wait and see the comments of the standing committee and any comments on watering down particular penal provisions that are prescribed in the stipulation. But nonetheless, it's a welcome change from the present system of penal consequences, which have proved to be inadequate.
The third one also, this is very significant as well, considering there was a spate of mob lynching. A lot of hue and cry was made about specific laws to deal with that. One of the things today that Home Minister Amit Shah had said, that mob lynching, at least that is the proposal, be a crime which is punishable even by death now.
Yes. And as I mentioned earlier, this penal code does go into uncharted territories as far as our penal laws are concerned. So mob lynching is a new crime that it seeks to establish under a penal code, and it also prescribes the death penalty for that. Having said that, if you actually contemplate practically, the term mob lynching contemplates a mob, and it might not be entirely practicable to confer the death penalty on a mob, because by very definition, it includes numerous people. And India, as you know, is a progressive country which shuns the death penalty, save in the rarest of rare cases. Having said that, the very presence of the potential of the death penalty in the books should deter mobs from committing such heinous crimes, and therefore one might justify the presence in the statute books. But in conclusion, the fact that it has been recognized as a penal offense with severe consequences is itself enough deterrent, which perhaps is the intent of this legislation.
Interesting, and we'll of course have to wait and see if it passes the muster of the standing committee, because that's going to be very significant. We'll have to see how much of these proposals are going to be accepted. Remember, this at this stage is merely a proposal which has been given forth by the government. It has been tabled by in the Lok Sabha by the Home Minister himself, but we'll have to wait and see how this pans out in the days to come. But Abhishek, another one thing, and this is very interesting I found, because for petty crimes, and there was earlier no such provision, for the first time ever, I think, again, as you said, called it uncharted territory, for petty crime, there is going to be community service, which has now been incorporated and suggested.
Yes, so this is a adoption from Western jurisprudence. In the sense, they acknowledge that at the end of the day, when you put a person in prison, it is primarily to reform that that perpetrator of a crime, rather than to punish him. The main goal in a democratic society is reform than penalty. Having said that, if it is a petty crime, like for example, stealing a piece of bread, or for that matter, stealing a wallet, then that individual might be expected to reform by providing community service, which will also help the community, rather than putting that person behind bars, which will not only affect his livelihood, but also might engender certain feelings in that person which are not entirely conducive to the community's well-being. Therefore, this is a welcome development that the Penal Code has acknowledged the effectiveness of community service and has implemented it for petty crimes.
So that's very significant as well. For petty crimes, now you have community service. But thank you so much, Abhishek, for joining us.